Hey y'all, it's Shirley Neighborhood Therapist, and it is February 6th, 2026. So it is day 6 of Black History Month, celebrating 100 years of Black history. Now, I'm going to do today a little bit different. We're going to do some Did You Know quick facts, and then I'm going to present y'all with a person that you likely have never heard of, but that you definitely need to know. So, first, did you know? Did you know that the current sitting president was racist? Did you know that, or just yesterday you found that out? Y'all just found that out yesterday, or you're pretending you just found that out yesterday, because this is the same man who called for the immediate death of five Black and Afro Latino teenagers decades ago in Central Park, New York, only to find out that they were innocent later. This is that same man. This is the same man who said that President Barack Obama was not an American citizen and fought to release his birth certificates but don't want to be released in these files. This is that man. So don't sit up here and tell me y'all didn't know that that man was racist. You did know, and you didn't care, and you still don't. And you know why you don't? Because the Confederate soldiers never paid for what they did. No, they never paid for treason. They never paid for going against the country. They never paid for enslaving people. They never paid. So because they never paid, racists to this day never have to pay for what they do. They never have to suffer any consequences. And so they can continue being racist. And that is exactly what that man sitting at the White House is going to continue to do because you let him and you're okay with it. And now you getting on this internet crying and acting stupid like you didn't know who he was when you did. But that's neither here nor there. He is. But you know why they really mad? You know why they really mad and why we should be celebrating Black History Month so hard? Because President Barack Obama ain't in them files. Him nor our First Lady Michelle. That's why they really mad. There is nothing they can say about this man or his wife that would stick because they were upstanding. They were above and beyond. They were twice as good to get half as much. And you might be saying, half as much? He became the president. Yes, but look how they treated him. Him becoming the president is the reason why the current one is here. Because racists couldn't take it. So they had to then go and put in the most idiotic racist that they could find. And that's why we're here. Now, more facts that you might not have known. Did you know that after the 1891 lynching of 11 Italian immigrants in New Orleans, the U.S. government, not Italy, the U.S. government paid $25,000 in reparations to the Italian government to soothe diplomatic tensions? Yes, President Benjamin Harrison authorized this payment following the mob murder of the Italians, some of whom had been acquitted of charges which strained U.S. Italian relations. So the Italians got reparations for their people being lynched here, but the black folks who were lynched here, and they can't give us because they can't figure out how it would work. Then also, did you know that the U.S. government paid reparations to slave owners? Now, you might have knew this one, but I'm going to give you a little bit more facts. They paid reparations to the slave owners after the Civil War, yes. This was through the District of Columbia Compensated Emancipation Act of 1862, the law signed by President Lincoln, who y'all always want to point to as the one who freed the slaves. He didn't do that out of the kindness of his heart, be clear. But on any note, he provided up to $300, which would estimate to about 9,000 roughly today, for each slave owner's person freed, totaling over 930,000 in compensation for lost property. Because even though the Emancipation Proclamation freed us, we were still considered lost property. And did you know that the last surviving Civil War veteran died in 1956? Albert Henry Woolson. Yes, he died in 1956 and was the last verified surviving veteran of the American Civil War. He was a Union Army drummer boy who enlisted at age 14 in 1864, and he died August 2nd, 1956 in Duluth, Minnesota at age 106, marking the end of a direct living link to that conflict. 1956, y'all. He died after my grandmother was grown. The last surviving widow of an American Civil War veteran, Helen Viola Jackson, she died in 2020. She died 6 years ago. Now, notably, too, the last widow of a Confederate soldier was Alberta Martin. She died in 2004. But it was so long ago. I wanted y'all to know those quick facts because, again, y'all think this was so long ago when people just now died. 1956. 2020, 2014, these people just died. So do you not think that their racist rhetoric wasn't passed down to every generation in their family? It was. And then the final lesser known fact of the day, the did you know, before I get to the prominent person we're going to talk about. Only 5% of enslaved Africans were brought to the United States of America. The majority went to the Caribbean and Brazil. And I thought that was fascinating because I think we have this idea that, oh, so many African enslaved, kidnapped people were brought here. And that's not the case. There weren't a ton of them here, yet they built this nation. I'm going to keep reiterating that too because y'all seem to not know that either. Did you know that the enslaved Africans built this nation? Did you know that? Well, now you do. But only 5% of them were brought here. Yes, more were taken to other stops, which would explain why those places are predominantly black. Would explain why the U.S. is not predominantly black. That would explain why y'all do feel like immigrants built this nation because only 5% of enslaved people were here to build this, and yet they did it. Now for today's person of interest, Henrietta Duterte, or Henrietta Bowers, born July 1817 and died December 23, 1903. She was an African American funeral home owner, philanthropist, and abolitionist from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was the first American woman of any race to own a mortuary, and her business operated as a stop on the Underground Railroad. So, Miss Bowers was born to an affluent free black family and raised in Philadelphia on Middle Alley, which is now called Panama Street in Philadelphia's Society Hill. She was one of 13 children, including entrepreneur, organist, and abolitionist John C. Bowers and Thomas Bowers, a renowned opera singer known as the Colored Mario. Known for her fashionable attire, she began her career as a tailor, and then in 1852 she married Francis A. Duterte, a Haitian American owner of an undertaking business. None of their children survived infancy, and Frances Duterte died in 1858. After her husband's death, she took over the funeral parlor and became the first American woman to operate such a business. The funeral home earned a reputation for quick undertaking services, which was necessary for the time before modern day embalming methods. The business was estimated to gross $8,000 a year, or approximately $211,500 as of 2017. This was all under her ownership. She was also a member of the Underground Railroad and used her business to assist fugitive slaves from southern states seeking freedom in the North. She often hid runaway slaves in coffins or disguised them as part of funeral processions. In addition, the success of the funeral parlor allowed her to make generous contributions to the community, and she supported the AME Church of St. Thomas, the Philadelphia Home for Aged and Infirm Colored Persons, and the Freedmen's Aid Society, which was created after the Civil War to assist formerly enslaved people in Tennessee. Later in her life, she transferred ownership of the funeral home to her nephew, Joseph Seth, and she died at the age of 86 on December 23, 1903. She is interred at the historic Eden Cemetery in Collindale, Pennsylvania. So, how about that? The first American woman, black, white, or otherwise, to own a funeral home and mortuary. And she used it to help people enslaved get to freedom. So, Henrietta Bowers Duterte. What a fascinating, fascinating black woman. All right, y'all. I hope y'all have a beautiful, wonderful rest of y'all day. And I will be back tomorrow with more black history facts and people. But just remember what I said at the beginning of this video. You're not surprised by that man's racism, and you're not surprised by the racism that still exists in this country. But either way, never forget.